as well. So there's lots going on, lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to start with Lametti and Justin Trudeau's ego. So this is a meme account. It says former Minister of Trampling, David Lametti, resigned suddenly today. This has nothing to do with him having been the Attorney General when Justin invoked the Emergencies Act illegally. It also has nothing to do with the fact that he discussed ending the peaceful protest using tanks. And yeah, so remember that. Here's the exchange with Marco Mendicino at the time for public safety minister. I believe he was the public safety minister. And Lametti says, you need to get the police to move and the CAF if necessary, the Canadian Armed Forces if necessary. Too many people are being seriously adversely impacted by what is an occupation. I am getting out as soon as I can. People are like, what is this, Saigon? Miss Ottawa, right? Like, oh my gosh, a love story getting out of Ottawa during the trucking siege of 2022. I'm getting out as soon as I can. What a buffoon. People are looking to us, you, for leadership, and not stupid people like Carney, Kath, my team. How many tanks are you asking for? I just want to ask Anita how many we've got on hand. I reckon one will do, says Lametti. So this was all a joke. Haha, they were guffawing, right? They weren't really talking about bringing tanks against the Canadian public. No. Here's no, and he's highlighting David Lametti's resignation letter. I read some of this. It's really long-winded. The first response is he spent more time writing this resignation letter than he ever spent time serving Canadians with integrity. And V for XRP says he's proud of the role he played during the Emergencies Act. Pathetic. He doesn't thank Trudeau. He doesn't thank his caucus coworkers. He is, again, really, really long-winded. He doesn't say anything about making any kind of mistakes or, oh man, that whole ruling in the court the other day, that really makes me think. Nothing like that. But I haven't read the whole letter, so apologies. I've got like 3/4 of the way through this page, but there are 3 more pages like it. So apologies that I haven't read it all. But also, I don't really care about David Lametti. One of the things that he does mention in his letter that he is leaving for this new law firm. I'll read the paragraph that he says that. He says, it's with mixed emotions that I announced that I will be leaving elected public service as of 31st January 24. I will be resigning as the Minister of Parliament for LaSalle, Emerald, Verdun. At the same time, I will be joining the firm of Fasken Manitou Dumoulin, SENCRI, as counsel. So he's leaving, being the former justice minister to work at a law firm. So there you go. Yes, we've got David Lametti here. We'll transfer you. That would be interesting, right? Like, want to hire David Lametti? Will he be consulting, or will he just be like a regular counsel that does work in the law firm, whatever that looks like? Fasken is tweeting this out 15 hours ago. Honored to welcome Mr. David Lametti, former Justice Minister and Attorney General of Canada, to Fasken as counsel, a dedicated advocate for Indigenous reconciliation. He's also deeply engaged in emerging technology, particularly AI. And there you go. So that's interesting. And I don't know anything about Fasken. I don't know anything about like that business or who owns it or anything to that effect. I'm assuming like when Scott Bryson left and he went to BMO, and it's just all about lateral movements. And by lateral movements, I mean keeping a roughly the same paycheck for roughly the same work, right? Lateral movement. He's not running his own law firm or anything like that. Scott Bryson, when he left, he went out to be a VP or something to that effect at BMO, so on and so forth. These guys, these people who leave, land on their feet, right? Everybody's real happy to welcome a former MP to the fold, right? So it's very interesting. I don't know. Here's Larry Brock. Doesn't matter what they did in office, right? It doesn't matter how terribly things have been mismanaged. They're happy to announce that. Weird, don't you think it's weird? Larry Brock says the NDP and the Bloc are aiding the Liberals in preventing the recall of a committee meeting which would address Trudeau's unconstitutional use of the Emergencies Act. Canadians demand answers, and we must act now. So Lametti is Lametti the sacrifice the Liberals are willing to make? Okay, so we'll get rid of that guy, and that's not enough. You want more? Here's Larry Brock talking about this.
Many of you have just heard that Justin Trudeau's use of the Emergencies Act in 2022 was found both illegal and unconstitutional by a federal court. Quite a different outcome in comparison with the Rouleau Commission. That's what happens when it's not Trudeau's neighbor or ski buddy in charge of a report or a decision. The Emergencies Act imposed draconian restraints on Canadians. Most notably, Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau used it to freeze bank accounts of people and authorize the arrest of citizens for attending a peaceful protest voicing opposition to federal government policies. Today, more than ever, Canadians demand answers on how the Trudeau government reached the decision to use the Emergencies Act and the legal opinion behind it. That's why my Conservative colleagues and I issued a letter to the Justice Committee chair and called on all parties to recall committee in order to address this crucial matter, as it does require immediate action. But instead of supporting our reasonable request, the NDP and Bloc Québécois are sabotaging the call to action and preventing us, and most importantly, you, from holding Trudeau, Freeland, and all those responsible to account. This delay is shameful, and we will continue to fight on your behalf as we continue to get answers for you. Stay tuned, and please spread this message.
So I showed you, he showed the letter that I read the other day asking for the return of this committee to address this issue that needs quick action, right? But nope, not going to happen. And that's just controlling the clock. It's making sure that if the committee can't meet, then nothing can happen. So it controls that, right? And effective, and they have the power to do it. So, and it doesn't seem like there's a mechanism to stop it at this point in time. Keith Wilson is responding to this MP, and this is the MP for Windsor Tecumseh. I'm just getting that wrong. And he says the Ambassador Bridge blockade threatened the livelihood of Windsor workers and businesses. It could have torpedoed our battery plant. The battery plant. Oh my gosh. Do you remember when they made a love story to the battery plant and they flew over the battery plant with a love song singing? And he was talking in the tweet about how our battery plant had so much work and blah, blah, blah. The battery plant is not going to be around 10 years from now. That's my prediction. My hope, because if the whole net zero thing goes through, then 2030, the battery plant will be around. Even if it doesn't actually produce batteries, it'll still produce workers. Anyway, the Ambassador Bridge blockade threatened the livelihood of Windsor and our businesses. It could have torpedoed the battery plant and 2,500 jobs. For the South Koreans, I mean, that's intolerable, right? The South Koreans would not appreciate that. Do you know how much money they spent to get the Canadian government subsidies? Yesterday, I stand by our decision to invoke the Emergencies Act to restore law and order in Canada. Well, it was illegal, and it's still illegal. He posted this after the decision. And Keith says, "Sir, you're spreading misinformation. Trade was not impacted because the truckers are smarter than liberal politicians. They just detoured to the crossing at Port Huron, Buffalo, and the 13 other U.S. crossings. So they didn't just sit there and say, oh, shucks, this bridge is closed, so I guess I can't continue my work. I'll just sit here. I mean, they're not high school students, right? Like, these people have solved problems, right? They understand that they have to get things done in order to get along in this world. So it's really interesting to see the misinformation and the cracked beliefs of sitting MPs, right? People who say, oh yeah, I stand by, even though the federal court has said this is illegal use and we shouldn't have done it, I stand by what we did. You were wrong. Like, you were wrong. Really wrong. Anna says, that didn't take long. So yesterday I said, one of the Liberal MPs was questioned they were talking during one of the interview shows, and he said, oh yeah, we definitely need a leadership review. We're going to have to look at that. That's going to be something that probably happens in the short term. And less than 24 hours later, the whip said, oh yeah, he'll be clarifying his statement. And I said, he's going to totally walk back his statement. And yes, Liberal MP Ken McDonald backs away from his call for Liberal leadership review of Trudeau. Now he says he didn't mean to call for a leadership review, and he supports Trudeau. Liberal MP says he thinks Trudeau should face a leadership review. So this is CBC News on January 24th. And by the 25th, Liberal MP backs away from leadership review comments as caucus meeting in Ottawa. Somebody took him out to the side and said, do you want to still be a Liberal? I guess so. Well, then you have to change your whole thing. Oh, okay. Done. This is what these people do. This woman is super excited to introduce Très Honorable Justin Trudeau. It's very culty. This looks very, very culty. Heather says these lying, treasonous psychopaths should never hold power to harm Canadians. Again, they lied and broke the law. 1 out of 185 resignations. Yeah, well, all of them need to be dealt with and full accountability as well. But here is the retreat, the beginning of the retreat. This is cringy, very, very cringy. Here we go.
Pinot, notre chef, le très honorable, le député. À mesure maintenant de accueillir le député de Papineau, notre chef, le très honorable, Justin Trudeau. Good to see you too.
It gets worse. It gets worse. Here we go.
Comment ça va, les amis? Six more years. Let's say, okay. Boy.
The 6 more years chant is just off-putting in a way that is right after it was illegal to do what you did. Everybody's like, yeah, 6 more years of this illegal stupidity. Let's ruin the country more. Yarrow says, Prime Minister Trudeau's speech at the Liberal caucus meeting, a must-watch. Polyev and his Conservatives chose to vote against support for Ukraine, calling it a faraway land to appease Putin apologists like Tucker Carlson. He calls out Leslyn Lewis as well. We'll start at the beginning here, and it's interesting how much Trudeau's leaning into Ukraine. He is saying Ukraine is absolutely the most important province in Canada right now. And if we don't fund Ukraine, I mean, goodness me, if Alberta doesn't want to fund Ukraine, then Alberta is racist, says Justin Trudeau. Paraphrasing. Everybody's racist. If you don't want to fund Ukraine, well, I mean, you are the problem. Here's Justin Trudeau at the Liberal retreat.
My very first call.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Fast. I know. Always. Here we go. We'll try it again. And he uses the way he speaks, his speed, and the way he underlines words to back up what he's saying, to really add punch to what he's saying. But it's just maddening. So apologies for people who don't like listening to Trudeau. I'm among those people. Here we go.
My very first call this year was with Volodymyr Zelensky, who wanted to know that Canada still stood with him, that Canadians still stood with him. And I told him, yes, we do. The Canadian government and most of the parties in the House will continue to stand with him. But Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives chose to vote against support for Ukraine, calling it a faraway foreign land to appease Putin apologists like Tucker Carlson and those who enable him. But while he does that, we have people like Yvonne.
Tucker Carlson's American, and he's not voting in Canadian anything. And doesn't really talk about Canadian politics all that often. Like, if you took all of Tucker Carlson's shows from when he started on X, I think he's mentioned Canada. Let's say you took a word cloud of things that Tucker has said since he started on X after Fox News. I bet Canada would be a very small word compared to United States, compared to Trump, right? Like, there's a whole bunch of other things, and not even just Trump, but there's a whole bunch of other things that have been the focus of Tucker Carlson's. I mean, Malay, right? He went down to Argentina and all of that. The Tucker Carlson barb is interesting in its clumsiness. People who support Tucker Carlson go to an event in Edmonton. It was a bigger event than Trudeau could have put on. So I mean, it's interesting in ways that, man, out of touch is the wrong word, but they're in their own world and they're spinning their own reality, and they're shit shocked that is not a shared reality with the whole country. It's interesting, off-putting, but interesting. I'm going to continue watching Trudeau for a minute or two. Here we go.
Baker and Mark Gerritsen, who are showing our Liberal government won't back down when it comes to standing up to bullies and fighting for democracy at home and around the world. Talking about democracy, let's all note that Leslyn Lewis, who dines with far-right German politicians and leads the call to withdraw Canada from the United Nations does not speak for Canadians. She may speak for the Conservative Party of Canada, but she does not speak for Canadians.
Why does he get to say that? She doesn't speak for Canadians. She speaks for Canadians who elected her to the House of Commons, right? Anyway, it's interesting, Trudeau's wet noodle. Justin Trudeau announces Canadians don't need catchy slogans, they need thoughtful solutions, and our team remains committed to working hard day in and day out and delivering the results that people across the country deserve. It's electioneering, etc. And I was going to show you this for a specific reason. Hold on, I can't remember why. Here Trudeau is laying out what he thinks Canadians expect of his government. What I expect of government is a sane economic policy, a sane border policy, and to just pretty much stay the hell out of my way unless I'm doing something egregiously illegal. Like, you see what I'm saying? And like, lower taxes, fill the potholes, don't let criminals out on the street. They fail on every one of them, right? Like the basics. Defend my rights, right? Make sure that my rights are a top priority. These people fail on all of these things. But Trudeau's reimagining the world in that he can give you baubles, and that's what the government is for, giving people the bestest baubles. It's ridiculous. And I mean, childish as well.
Canadians rightly.
He's also doing the growl thing, growl thing. I don't know what it is, but he does it often. Here it is.
Love this country. And they expect us to continue to have a government that lives up to their vision, their hopes, and their dreams of who we are and what we can accomplish all together. C'est ce qui nous rassemble d'un
So
bout de ce pays.
That's it. I just think he's not able to articulate a vision that people are going to get behind. So he's trying everything at this point in time. And like, they're well on their way to accomplishing a lot of the goals that have been set out by whatever group is directing this. Canada is welcoming lots and lots of immigrants, way more than we can house. We have 10 cities in our cities, just like in the United States, who has a completely open southern border and has people walking over it. So when I say there is something else directing this, I didn't vote for that. I didn't vote to do this. This is insanity. This is what we're doing is economically crazy. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and our elections don't seem to change anything anyway. So I think, and I've articulated this quite often, that there's something else making our leaders do things that are not best for the country, right? But best for some other agenda. And so when I'm talking about like them being influenced, I look at what's happening in other countries, and this isn't by accident. These leaders aren't waking up and saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to completely screw my country by opening up the borders. Ha 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 ha. Like, somebody's telling them to do that. It doesn't make any sense in the context of my job is to make sure that my citizens are safe, my citizens are able to afford a home, my citizens are able to feed themselves reasonably, and so on and so on. It doesn't make sense to do what these people are doing, right? You can't save a country by wholesale importing all of the poor people from that country to your country. You can't save that. Oh, we've taken all your poor people. You're welcome. What are we going to do with them? Like, first, you haven't helped that country. Second, you've harmed our country. What now? Like, and the answer is immigration is good, you racist. And that it's not, when I say it's not resonating, I don't think people are voting for this, but they're very effective in getting their agenda accomplished across the board, across the West. So there's something going on, right? And what's going on? It looks like the elections are rigged. It looks like all the puppets are acting in tandem, in lockstep, if you will. And they make up all these nonsense stories that, you know, people really like this and people want us to deliver the Canada of their hopes and their dreams. What nonsense, what absolute bullshit. People who don't understand what government should be doing and should be as limited and small as possible. People who understand what government is wouldn't be swayed by that, but most people don't understand what government is, and they think that the government should be giving them free things, right? But they pay taxes. I guess they don't actually pay taxes. The people who are extracting money from the government don't pay taxes, do they? Pierre Poilievre is making fun of Justin Trudeau. He says Trudeau did a GQ photo shoot and interview with the Toronto Star to explain that Canadians don't like him because they're grumpy at the world. So if you're frustrated he doubled your rent, hiked taxes, and turned your neighborhood into a crime zone, be more grateful. Yep. That's it. This was interesting. This is usually electioneering, but this is all part and parcel of what's going on in the Conservative Party finding their feet right now with Poilievre as the leader, and they're being empowered. They're getting new candidates on. This one's a new candidate. I thought this was interesting. He was named during the retreat by Trudeau as a twofer, and he explains this. Here we go.
Justin Trudeau is talking about me today. Yeah. During a speech to his Liberal caucus, Trudeau referred to me as a twofer.
And now, Pierre Poilievre's new candidate in Durham is a twofer.
Now, I'm not exactly sure what that means in reference to a human being. I'm also not sure how the Prime Minister has time to be name-calling when he should be trying to save his failed...
Well, then he knows what it means. Like, if you know enough that it means it's a name-calling thing, then you know what it means. But it's interesting because Justin Trudeau's being open about this. If the Conservatives called a Liberal candidate a twofer, right, they'd probably make political hay out of it. The Liberals would make a commercial or something like that. Intolerance in our government, whatever. But this happens, and the Liberals come up smelling like roses, right? Canadians want us to deliver the government of their dreams. Give me a break. Like, honestly, does he stand in front of the mirror and do that as he primps his hair? The Post-Millennial is reporting, Tucker Carlson says, you should dislike and resist Justin Trudeau and his government to the maximum extent of your ability. Yeah, okay, sure. I remember watching Jon Stewart when I was younger. I like Jon Stewart. In fact, this show is a lot inspired by Jon Stewart. And apparently he's coming back. Yesterday, there's a Black Pigeon Speaks, and I don't have the link for this, so apologies, but you'll have to just Google it. Black Pigeon Speaks. This was on the Canada Poly Chat yesterday. And they shared Jon Stewart's coming back as an executive producer on The Daily Show, and he's coming back to host Mondays for the 2024 election. And Black Pigeon Speaks does a great job at telling people why the format, it's quick audience laughter, and it prioritizes audience laughter. I prioritize my laughter because I think I'm funny. But my show structure is very similar to The Daily Show, the best parts of The Daily Show, which was Jon Stewart's monologue and him going through the news, and the Colbert Report, which was Colbert just talking at the camera most of the time. Those were the best segments. I hated the interviews because I thought the interviews were just boring and ridiculous. But Tucker Carlson got fired from CNN because of Jon Stewart. And that Black Pigeon Speaks reminded me of it. And I couldn't remember. He was a host of Crossfire. And I remember disliking him, thinking he was, well, they were all trying to attack Jon Stewart because he wasn't real news. And Jon Stewart said, no shit, I'm not real news. I've got puppets. But the point isn't that Jon Stewart isn't real news, because people who watch him do think he's real news, and they give his opinions a lot of weight, right? And that was the complaint. And that was the complaint from Papa Bear, O'Reilly as well, that they were misrepresenting news, and they were giving the Democrat spin with a smile and a wink type deal. Like they were giving it all the best of the democratic ideals, but none of the reality of it. And at the time, I thought they were incorrect. And turns out they were 100% right. They were 100% right. Anyway, Tucker Carlson got fired because of Jon Stewart, and now he's the biggest guy on X, and Jon Stewart's coming back. So that should be interesting, but I don't think I trust Stewart nearly as much as I did when I was a kid. I just like the format of the show. Anyway, here's Jon Stewart. Here is Tucker Carlson talking about how you should resist and dislike Justin Trudeau. I should mention, Tucker Carlson's dad was CIA, and he grew up in Washington. He's like anybody who knows his history, he's very, very connected. He talks about how connected he is, and Project Mockingbird and blah, blah, blah. I think Amazing Polly's done a deep dive, or at least has information listed about Tucker, talking about how connected he is. So anything that he says should also be taken with a grain of salt. Everybody, from Vivek Ramaswamy to Tucker Carlson, everybody, except maybe Carrie Lake, even Donald Trump. Here we go.
You should dislike and resist Justin Trudeau and his government to the maximum extent of your ability. But before you do that, you should just laugh at him until you can't breathe. Seriously. The guy's like, he's showing up for a costume party when no one else is. There's no costume party, and there's Justin Trudeau. Like speaking as some sort of moral voice. Weird little cross-dresser. So anyway, that's my first piece of advice. You should dislike and resist Justin Trudeau.
Yes, he's worn blackface. And has he cross-dressed? I haven't seen him cross-dressed. What does Tucker know that we don't? Cross-dresser? Okay, here is the manifesto from, I think it's 135 I want to start this at. The manifesto of the Edmonton arsonist firearm charges guy, because he wasn't charged with terrorism. He was charged, according to what I saw yesterday, and charges may have changed. Maybe they updated them to terrorism, but I'm not holding my breath on that. He was charged with arson and firearms charges. So before he went and committed these arson and firearms offenses in the Edmonton City Hall, he made a manifesto tape. And the manifesto tape feels like a whole bunch of short TikToks. Like, I'll push play here, and this is a self-contained little segment. And just before, you know what, I'll back it up a little bit because you'll see the change, I think at 135. So we'll listen to 20 seconds, so 15 seconds of this, and then at 135 you'll see that break off, and it'll be a new segment. That's the segment I want to listen to. He says a lot of the same things 3 times in this segment. Like, he says basically the same thing 3 different ways over and over again. But he's talking about things that a lot of Canadians agree with. And he says, we have to abide by Canadians' laws. And then he goes and shoots up the Edmonton City Hall with an AK-47. Like, what? What? How does that make any sense? Nothing makes any sense. And so I wanted to highlight that because I touched on it briefly because I was shit shocked that they didn't charge him with terrorism. But I didn't talk about this aspect of this manifesto where he says we have to obey Canadians' laws. No, just give me a second. I'm going to go walk in here and shoot this place up. The reason I'm pointing out the TikToks is it seems like the Globe and Mail doesn't. Yesterday I showed a 20-second segment where he's talking about you've got to free, or Israel is in the wrong. Basically, he's saying that the genocide in Gaza is wrong. And in this one, he kind of talks about that, but he doesn't talk about it very much. And but each one could be used to serve any narrative. That's the point. Anyone could, like the Globe and Mail didn't talk about the Israel aspect, the Israel-Gaza aspect at all. They framed him as a right-wing extremist, right? And people said, hold on, are right-wing extremists white? So weird. So watch for the cut. And my hypothesis is maybe this guy's an everyman terrorist, an everyman false flag was the term that jumped in my head first. They can use it for anything. Like if you've got a 6-minute manifesto and 2 minutes of it, you're talking about, we've got to get rid of X group, right? Then you could be cast in this light. And then if another 2 minutes of it, you're talking about this other thing, you could be cast in a different light. And that's what our newspapers are doing. So it's interesting to note. Here is the weird part. Here we go.
Hurting their community, should feel ashamed of themselves, and inshallah we will rise against you guys and we'll put you on trial. As immigrants, we must understand that we are part of this.
Okay, so there was the cut. Did you see that?
Agenda. We're not here for no reason. This is a man-made war. This is a man-made immigration crisis that we're all here. But instead of hate and anger in our hearts, we must spread love, respect one another, show honesty with one another, and promote pro-life and work with one another to build our economy, our country, and promote strong and pro-human life. We must respect the Canadians' laws, and we must stand with the owners of this land and Canadians shoulders to shoulder to fight racism, to fight this inflation, to fight this rising of costs, to fight our tax money going into this genocide that's going into all this wars, to weapons that's destroying all these countries. We must all stand united and fight this off and promote a healthy social life, healthy health system, healthy education. We gotta start taking control of our lives and taking control of how we spend our money. I have a good.
And another cut. So it started with a cut, ended with a cut. During that conversation, he talks about how we have to be pro-life. But hold on a second, I'm going to go shoot this place up. I'll be right back. We have to support Canadians' laws. pew, 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 oh, Molotov cocktails, right? This isn't Modern Warfare 2, buddy. Like, so it is an interesting, weird video that, again, doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Here is Bossino, and no, he's not talking about the terrorist attack. He is talking about Tucker Carlson's mean words against SG2 LBT Lama Lama Ding Dongs. And what? How not one of these liberal people is worried about the terrorist attack in Edmonton. They don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about how mean Tucker Carlson is. Here we go.
So I'm here with my colleagues, Liberal caucus members, ministers all, to talk about what happened last night in Edmonton when the Premier of the province of Alberta, Danielle Smith, invites Tucker Carlson right into the heart of my riding. You can tell a lot about a person by the company they keep. And I have knocked those doors in Edmonton Centre. And I know how progressive a riding Edmonton Centre is. I've represented it since 2015. And for Danielle Smith to bring the mouthpiece of the MAGA conservative far right to Edmonton Centre to spew hate about LGBTQ2 people is beyond the pale. It's deplorable, and we won't stand for it. And I can tell you, it is completely unacceptable for the Premier of any province to say that she wants to put a target on the back of any Canadian politician and my friend and colleague Stephen Guilbeault simply for doing his job. You can have respectful discourse in this country. You can raise the issue. You can bang your fist on a table at a FedProv meeting. That's all legit. But you do not summon the dogs of MAGA conservatism to come and somehow try to scare us and to try to incite violence against politicians.
A man with Molotov cocktails and a gun he was a security guard at the Edmonton City Hall, and he went in there and he started shooting indiscriminately after saying we have to be peaceful and stand shoulder to shoulder with Canadians to stop racism and stuff. But hold on, I just got to shoot this place up first. What? But these guys are more worried about Tucker Carlson saying mean words. Here's Stephen Guilbeault, and he's talking about Danielle Smith saying that he's got to go. Well, he's trying to shut down the ability for Albertans to keep themselves from freezing in the cold. So yeah, Danielle Smith's kind of frustrated, but Stephen Guilbeault's the victim here. Trust him.
I mean, this goes beyond me and the fact that I was targeted last night at this event. This increases political violence against everyone who runs for office in this country, whether they're doing it at the municipal level, at the provincial level, or at the federal level. As my friend and colleague Randy said, like, we can have differences of opinion. We can bang our fist on the table when we meet. We can have strong disagreement. But to incite violence against people who disagree with you, that's not how things should be done in Canada.
Are you not contributing to the divide by coming out here and comparing Poilievre to this and making this about him? Are you not contributing to the divide by doing that? If your government has been accused,
we're not comparing Poilievre to him. I think what
you're not. Have you looked at your own advertising from
Mr.
your party?
What Mr. Rodriguez just said is he said I'm asking Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the opposition, to condemn those hateful and violent statements by Tucker Carlson.
Hateful and violent statements, but we had nothing about that terrorist guy. Here's what Pablo Rodriguez was saying in this scrum.
Poilievre's name in your comment. I mean, is this going to be your strategy effectively going forward? Is tying Pierre Poilievre to Trump?
He wants to be prime minister of this country. What happened last night is not acceptable. Is he gonna condemn that? If he wants to run for prime minister,
we have 4 men who have been charged but not had due process, sitting in remand custody for 2 years. That's unacceptable. Sitting down with Tucker Carlson in Edmonton is not unacceptable. What these liberals have done to our economy and our immigration system and our housing system and our gas prices and ability to make good products and produce good products and sell them on the world stage, that's unacceptable. What these guys are saying is insane.
Minister, he should have the courage to condemn those. It's not acceptable in our country.
So that's going to be your strategy? People attended, sir. I mean, what do you make of the fact that there is an audience for it and for their perspective?
Well, as I said in French, the extreme right politics, don't ask the question if it's coming to Canada. It's already here.
Is this
and they're bringing it.
And don't mention anything about the terrorist attack in the Edmonton City Hall. And that terrorism is already here. Oh, I mean, excuse me. Firearms and arson. Evan Solomon Evan want to buy a painting. Solomon says, my latest on Tucker Carlson's visit to Canada to liberate it, but liberate it from what? Evidently, Evan is just fine. He doesn't have to buy houses. He just trades paintings for houses. Maybe, I'm not sure. G0 Media, I guess Evan works for G0 Media. He's very, very reputable these days. Says Tucker Carlson delivered an apocalyptic message to Canadians this week. The moment isn't a mere elections. This moment isn't a mere election cycle, a debate of ideas, or even a culture war. It's a war. Well, like a culture war is a war? What? It's not a culture war. It's a war. I mean, you're wielding that pen not like a sword, Evan. Evan. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful